Welcome to another episode of Career Uninterrupted. I'm your host, Lochan Narayanan, founder and CEO of Off Experiences. Today's episode is a very special episode for me. A lesser known area, and more so, a lesser talked about space too: careers and adoptive parents. Today, we are going to explore the space and world with two amazing professionals, Hita and Rajarajeshwari, also known as Raji, with different career trajectories and different personal goals. Today's conversation will try to shed light on how similar or how different the two journeys are of being a biological parent or being an adoptive parent, how adoption is perceived by organizations, families, and even societies at large. And in this conversation, we'd really like to shed light on creating a supportive ecosystem as a single adoptive parent. So, thank you, Hita, and thank you, Raji, for being here. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this and also sharing your journey. If before we jump into the set of questions that I do have for you, if you could also start by introducing yourself so that our audience and listeners can know a bit more about you. Whoever can go first.
Okay, I can go first. I'm Rajarajeshwari. As you said, many people call me Raji, and I come from a very traditional family of Tambrams, and but thankfully, I come from a very unconventional thinking patterns. So that has helped me a lot.
Mhm.
Um, from a career perspective, I started almost 22 years ago as a management finance trainee in a public sector undertaking. I grew over a period of time, and today I'm the head of finance working in Siemens. It's been a great journey, wonderful. And as you said, I'm a single adoptive parent. I'm also a coach. I also freelance on organization consulting. That's about me shortly.
Thank you, Raji. Thanks for that short introduction. We will dive into more about you as we get into the conversation. Hita, would you like to quickly introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm from Mangalore, and I was born in a small town, and I was brought up by an extremely progressive set of parents who I think somewhere during my teenage years I started rebelling, and the rebellion stayed on where I questioned status quo. And my father always had the patience to answer those questions. I think that is where, um, I mean, we will talk more about this, but that is where also I did not find any resistance. I found a lot of encouragement while I wanted to adopt as a single parent. Uh, Professionally, I'm an L&D professional. I have been in L&D for as long as I know. I have handled multiple different roles, but I have always come back to learning and development. Outside of work, I am also a very strong advocate of DEI and adoption. So I'm really thankful to you that you are addressing a very important topic on this forum.
Thank you so much. Thanks for that. Um, I have to start, and I have to tell our listeners this that um, I had only heard of single adoptive mothers, as Sushmita Sen was the only example that we had in front of us. And back then, I think as a young girl, I attributed it to saying, okay, she has, she's a celebrity. Some certain things are acceptable in the Bollywood world, and I thought it was okay. And the next single adoptive parent I met was Hita, and I remember I had like bunch of questions for her of and all of that. And today I think I'm using the podcast Hita to ask those questions all over again in a different way.
Mm.
But the question to both of you, that how did this thought of you know um, adopting, what inspired you to make this decision? It's not an easy decision in a country like India, where we are still very conservative, we are still very patriarchal, and adopting itself is challenging, even by heterosexual couples. But being a single mom and choosing to adopt, how did that happen? How did that journey happen for both of you?
Yeah, so I'll go first. So, contrary to what you said, I think this decision came to me because of the patriarchal Indian mindset. Um, the whole see, I realized as I grew up that I questioned the institution of marriage. I was an anti-marriage, but the way the whole concept of marriage was introduced to me was something I could not agree to. I was told that your biological clock is ticking, so you need to get married. You grow older, then you will have fewer options. You will probably settle down for whoever's available. And so I was thinking, what is the whole point of marriage? Now, if everyone's talking about marriage as a means to have a baby, so why can't I do it without marriage, right? And the other thing was one of my really good friends in college. Um, I didn't know she was adopted till the last day of our college.
Okay.
And I always thought that she had inherited her father's sense of humor. So I would always tell her, you're just like your dad with your jokes. And only on the last day, she told me that, hey, you know what, I need to tell you something, I'm adopted.
Mm,
Um, and that also made me wonder about nature, nurture, upbringing, what we learn, what we inherit. And to me, it was amazing. Until then, all the loose adoption jokes I had cracked, while it drove a sense of guilt. Well, that wasn't actually the point when I decided to adopt because I was barely 19, 20 at that time. But then what she told me stayed with me. And when I was very sure of becoming a parent, but I wasn't very sure of being someone's wife.
mm,
So I tried different things, to be honest. I went and spoke to a gynecologist about freezing eggs and carrying the baby myself. And then when she told me that she cannot let me know who the donor is, and I was very particular about knowing who the donor is. And that is when she gave me the idea. She said, "Have you considered adoption?" And that is when all this. So there were multiple things. How my relatives were trying to push marriage, and my friends' memories, and this whole thing of why can't I adopt? Because it was a total win-win. And the more I thought about it, the more I warmed up to the idea.
mm.
And yeah, the rest is history.
Wow, awesome. And how old is your daughter now?
She's 8.
She's eight.
Yeah.
Okay. Raji, how was your journey as well? Was it similar,
Yeah, nice,
different?
nice. Whatever you said is very inspiring, Hita, for me. Something similar but still different, I would say. I was not anti-marriage. I, of course, went into the flow of, in this custom of getting prepared to see as many men come and see you, and that is where it started off. And I got frustrated. I'm like, at some point in time, I said, I don't want to be part of this, coming and seeing and horoscope matching and all of that. And I said, okay, I'm not getting married. That was the first decision that I took. And of course, there was a lot of other repercussions out of it. People didn't like it. Coming from a very traditional family, it was not accepted. But I stuck to my decision. I said, yeah, I know what I'm saying, and I would like to not get married because of the frustration of the entire process. And at some point in time, after almost 6 years that I decided, I thought I needed an anchor because I thought it was very easy to just let time fly. I mean, I was doing well at work. Um, like everybody would say, you have good money, you have good career. What else? Just go around every place and do whatever you want. That sounded nice, but somewhere I had lost a sense of grounding. So I wanted some anchor, sense of anchor. And that is when I started thinking about children and kids. And I thought that would give me a better anchor than getting married or having maybe at that age, I didn't have that sense of sharing my space with anybody else. Probably I could do that with a child, but not with an adult again. So that is when this thought came up. And of course, that's again
Mm.
another round of discussions and stories and all of that. And that's where it started.
Right, awesome. Um, so, can you both share the process, walk us through the process of adoption, and also both in terms of the process per se and the obstacles that you would have faced both. I'm sure in different ways, people asking multiple questions or guilt tripping you in different ways or judging you through the process and maybe judging you post uh, that your daughters came home as well and all of that. So what was that journey and what was the process of adoption also like? So I would like to use this also as a time to talk a little more about how the process is.
Yeah. So let me start with the process, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there is only one legal way to adopt in India. Okay, it's run by the government. It's bound by a set of laws, and with zero corruption, right? And it's through CARA, CARA, CARA. Um, so the process is quite long and it's a little strenuous, especially the waiting bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, the law doesn't expect you to be extremely well off and with a great job, a great career. They should know that you will be able to provide for the child. So, to that extent, and you're in good health, right? So, you will have to submit your medical report. While you register on CARA, you will have to submit a set of financial reports, a set of references. There will be a social service agency that will come home, do a home study, interview people at home, and see if this is the right kind of an environment for the child. If needed, they will probably speak to a few references. In my case, they did because I was a single mother. Um, and after all that is done, they clear. So that part is the easier part. I must tell you, all this documentation and upload of documents. And once they upload the document that you are eligible to be a parent, that is when the most difficult part starts, and that is the waiting bit. Yeah, because there are a few children's homes that are authorized for adoption. Not every children's home is authorized to do that,
Okay, okay.
right? So the wait period to that extent is long. It's also long because most of the parents prefer newborn children. In my case, of course, I had opted for a 2 to 4 year old girl child from anywhere in India. So there are multiple things. People can choose states. People can choose gender, health status. You can choose a child with siblings, or you can choose a twin. So there are so many options you have, and you can change the options 3 times during your wait period.
Okay.
And yeah, there are a lot of other smaller things. When you get a reference, it's called a referral. Then a child is referred to you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the wait period can be anywhere between 2.5 to 3 to 4 years. Sometimes it goes up to 4 years as well if you have opted for a particular state. Yeah, and then you go meet the baby. Um, yeah, well, that's and once you meet the baby, then you get the baby with you, or you can also ensure that the baby is fine. And I did not do that. So I went, I met her, and I got her because I did not see any point traveling all the way to a different city just to meet her for a bit. So then, when you get the baby, the initial 6 months is called a foster period. That you're still not a legal parent, but you're a foster parent,
Mm-hmm.
and during which there are a few directives that are given to you.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the foster period, which could be anywhere between 4 to 6 months, you go back to a court in the same place where you adopted the child from. There is a court hearing, and where the judge will finally decide if you are eligible to be a parent or no.
Do you need to resubmit all your documents
You
at that
need to,
point, or what
yes,
would it
you
be?
need to.
Okay.
Yeah, so different states have different rules, but mostly you'll have to submit your financial documents again, your employment proofs again. another health status, because after the wait, then you're in foster care. So they might want to check if your health is still okay.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
the court gives you an order and tells you that these are the things you will need to have for the child, or you will need to do for the
Mm.
child. And that's when you become a legal parent, and
Mm.
you also get the child's birth certificate.
With
Again,
your name
in
as a
your name
parent.
as a parent. In your name as a
Okay.
parent. Yeah.
Okay.
So now that is the process in
So
short.
just before
Um,
you go on, Hita, for me, probably
sure.
mine was the fastest adoption, I would say, because my
Oh,
waiting
really?
period was probably 3 months. That's all.
Wow.
Because this
Oh,
social worker
okay.
who came home and told me all of this, she said there is also something that they put up online on Fridays on the Kara website.
Yes.
And I had entrusted that to my sister, and she would look at Fridays, the specific babies that I wanted. And then we found one already maybe in 2 months, and then we went and got her. And then the procedure, like you said, was after even the foster care was not too much for me. It was just 2.5 months, and we went back to court.
Lovely.
Yeah,
Okay. So, so the foster care duration and the process can vary by state to state. Is that do I understand that correctly?
It could vary from state to state. Sometimes, even within the state, it's a little different, because I know of other adoptive parents in Karnataka who have adopted from different states and have also adopted from the same state where I met my daughter.
Hmm.
It that also varies, but it shouldn't. It does not take more than 6 months.
Got it. Okay. Okay. So, in terms of the process, that's the right process to follow, and the process remains the same whether you're a single person choosing to adopt or whether as a couple you're choosing to adopt. The process remains the
It
same.
remains the same.
Got it. The question, the second part of the process. So this is the process. The second part of the process in terms of the questions, and maybe when you told your family or
Mm,
friends, colleagues, some cases maybe bosses, to say, okay, I am going to be adopting, and because there is a whole part around referrals and references and so on.
mm.
Um, how did that go about? And how was that journey for both of you? In case Raji, you want to
sure.
start and share your
I
journey
would say it was
first.
pretty easy. People were very welcoming in my case. Even at, I mean, to convince my parents that I will adopt was a different story. It took me more than 1.5 years to tell them that I am going that path, no matter what. But I would want you to be
Hmm.
supportive. Unless you are okay, I wouldn't go there. That
Hmm.
part was difficult.
Hmm.
But at work and
Hmm.
asking for reference was quite easy. I had a German manager, so I had already upfront told her that I would be adopting, and she was very, very supportive. She said, "Okay, that is fine, and we will see who can take over your role when you're not there." And also, when I went asking for references,
Hmm.
people were very happy to provide me
Hmm.
references. And there was also another coach, my coach, who gave me a list of people whom I had to talk to so that I get prepared. It was for me quite a good journey. Easy it was.
How about you, Hita? How was that journey for you?
Yeah, it was a beautiful journey for me as well. Um, and I think the only person who had to be convinced was myself. So when I was sure about it, I casually mentioned it to my parents. So it was quite funny when I asked my mother, "Can we get another dog?" And she said, "No way. You can get anything in the house, but not a second dog." So I said, "Okay, so can I get a baby?" And she didn't expect that, you know. So she looked at my father and she said, "Do you want to have this conversation with her?"
Hmm.
So my father, he was the perfect devil's advocate. So he asked
Hmm.
me questions to confirm my readiness, and never once he asked me, "What will people say?"
Hmm.
His questions were around, "Are you financially ready?
Hmm.
You might get into a relationship tomorrow. You
Hmm.
know, you're single today, but you might decide to do that
Hmm.
tomorrow. So,
Hmm.
have you decided how to go about it?" And he also told me what it is like to have a baby. He said, "You plan travels with your friends at the drop of a hat. And if
Hmm.
you're leaving somewhere in the night, you decide about it half an hour before.
Hmm.
These things are not going to happen when you have a baby. So you will have to plan you around the child. So are you ready for that? Your social life is not going to be the same anymore. And it was a very mature conversation, and I'm really glad we had that conversation because it kind of made me more ready mentally.
Hmm.
And when he had all the answers, he said, "Okay, so I'm going to take it up with the family and I'm going to announce." So he made an announcement to the family and said, "I'm going to have a grandchild.
Hmm.
My daughter's adopting." So I think most of the family was extremely happy. I had my cousins who called me and spoke to me, very thrilled, except for one uncle who asked me, "Have you given up on men?"
Hmm.
Okay. So I had to tell him, no, my baby is coming into this world because of a man. So I haven't given up on men. And my friends, my immediate friends, who were really thrilled, who came and told me that just get the child and we will give her a lot of love. So I knew even before my daughter came that she's going to come into an extremely loving world.
Hmm.
I had supportive colleagues, that.
Hmm.
Um, I did not, just that I think there were no organization rules or policies around adoptive parents' leave.
Hmm.
That is something that was being thought through for the first time in the organization. But otherwise, in terms of colleagues or friends or family, I think I had really good support.
And that's incredible. I know a lot of people, um, even in case of um, a couple that's choosing to adopt, they will sit them down and say there are so many ways that you can conceive a child today. There is the IVF tech. If you have, and I know a couple that said that we don't even want to go down that path. And the whole family kind of sat them down saying, no, you should have your own gene, your own DNA, and so on and so forth, and all of those conversations. So somewhere in general, adoption is always considered as the last um, step to parenting, right? So people uh, try and conceive naturally, then they conceive with support, then in some cases consider surrogacy, and then look at adoption. And uh, from a very single mother lens, it's also like it's considered a big deal. The question that I'm surprised only one uncle asked that question, saying, "Have you given up on men?" Someone else may have said, "What happened? Why are you thinking you don't want to get married?" and so on and so forth. But I'm really glad to hear this, that the families came around, and that both of you had the kind of supportive space and environment to bring your daughter in, bring your respective daughters into this family and into this space. So just bringing up this question, and I know, Raji, you said you were working with a German manager, so probably from a cultural lens, it was not not seen with any different view, is how I would perceive it, with that person. But in terms of organization and its policies, did your organization already have anything around adoption policies in place for adoptive parents? How did that go
Unfortunately, at
about?
that point, no, we did not have it. I think at that point there was even maternity at just 3 months or
Okay.
something. I don't know if the government had already.
So from Raji, you mentioned that you were working with a German manager, and therefore maybe culturally, the West is usually more aligned to the idea of adopting and a single parent, and so on. But purely from an organizational lens, did your organization already have any policies in place for adoptive mothers? How was that process and journey
Actually,
for
at
you?
that point of time, there was no policy around adoption. And I don't know even if maternity
Mm-hmm.
policies were beyond 3 months. If the government themselves had that, I don't remember. But my manager was quite supportive. So she told me that I had to
Mm-hmm.
bond with my child and it was important that I take off at least for a month. And then she
Mm.
helped me to come back slowly with work from home options. That was, I'm talking about almost 7 years ago. So that was
Mm.
what it was. But later, over a period of time, we did build in an adoptive policy for adoptive mothers. Yeah, adoptive parents, I would say.
Mm. Mm. Okay. Hita, how was your journey? I know I was partly involved with it, but I would want to hear your experience with that as well.
Yeah. Yes, there was no policy around adoption leave. But what I had already also done is I had spoken to my senior leaders about adopting a baby and the possibility of not being around
Mm.
when the baby arrives. So yeah, so I think it was thought through. It was an afterthought. But yes, I was given 3 months off, and the organization was also supportive. Of course, they had a creche in place, so when I returned to work, I could get my child to the creche and leave her there.
Mm.
So the change wouldn't be a lot for her to take. So in terms of policies, I think the organization did a good job, but in
Mm.
pockets. I'm not bringing
Mm.
this up. I think the curiosity that some people had around the whole thing. I'm sure a lot of people wondered, will she get married or no?
Mm.
How will she bring up the child? And somehow,
Mm.
if the child is not biological, I also got this
Mm.
sense that that is this feeling that, okay, you're not the real mother,
Mm.
and I think if you're married, there is a different status that comes along with marriage. Um,
Mm.
so I could get those senses. I also had questions and tips, mostly from um, parents who hadn't adopted, at
Mm.
workplace, where they told me, you need to do this and you need to do that. There were people who also
Mm.
came and told me, when a biological mother gives birth, there is a particular hormone that gets secreted, and that increases the bonding between the
Mm.
mother and the child. And I don't know why I was being told that. Probably indirectly to say that you will have to put in more effort to bond with your baby.
Mm.
Uh, but when I spoke to adoptive parents, I think the conversation was entirely different.
Mm.
When I told them that I'm not adopting an infant, I'm adopting a 2-year-old, they
Yeah,
said,
toddler in some
yeah,
sense.
they
Yeah.
said it's absolutely fine. There is no difference.
Mm.
So
So, Raji, just out of curiosity, how old was
She
your
was
daughter
one year,
when you
two
brought her
months.
home? Okay, so both of you not infants, right? Like they are in that young toddler stage of bringing in. I do want to ask, what were the first set of challenges that you faced? When you brought your daughters home, and every mother, they anticipate the pre-child as a different state.
mhm.
They think once the child comes, I will do X, I will do Y, and I will be this and I will be that. Once the child comes, they're like, okay, throw everything out of the window. I'm like literally, jumping in, sometimes on that grenade to save everybody in the process. But how was that journey for you? Because with a with a baby, with a really small child, the needs are little limited, right? Like it's more about feeding and cleaning and all of that. But with children slightly older, the needs change a little for them. So when they came in, how was that journey for you? What were the challenges which you never anticipated that you will face or feel or any of that?
Would you like to
Yeah,
go
sure.
first, Raji?
So for me, one advice that my mother told me is go with an empty mind. You don't know what will come. Because unlike biological
Mm,
parents, for the lady, she's already carrying the child. She's mentally and
mm,
emotionally prepared. But in my case, it was very
mm,
short a time. And the 15 days that I had to go and get her, she came from a different state. It was all about documentation and going to the social service center and all of that. So First thing was what happened when I brought her home. She was very well settled. I did not expect that she would be so very settled. So she had a peaceful sleep, but she started waking up in the middle of the night. And that is something that I never anticipated. I didn't know what to do at that point in time. So those were smaller things. And so thankfully I had my mother beside me, and she was helping me out to even see what would work to keep her quiet. We didn't know if she was crying because of hunger or because of fear. We didn't know. So it did take some time to settle down in the nights. That was something that was different and not anticipated. The other one was I was always scared if she would understand our language. But that was like a piece of cake. I think it was just in my mind. Otherwise, nothing. I think that the nights, handling the nights were tough in the beginning, but later it was okay because all my friends and other family members are very, very supportive, very welcoming. So
Amazing. How was it for you, Hita?
Yeah, so I must agree with Raji that having parents around is a huge blessing. So I took my mother with me when I had to go get my daughter. And I remember my mom asking me, "Are you nervous?" While I told my mom, "No, I'm not nervous, but I don't know how to change diapers. So you come with me." And I so we were coming back by flight, and people had told me, baby's first flight, she might get an ear block, she might cry, and she might be nervous, she might be scared. So I carried a whole lot of coloring books and colors to distract her, a lollipop just in case she gets a ear block, and I downloaded loads of Peppa Pig series on my phone so I can show that to her and distract her. And I didn't need any of that. So initially, and my biggest fear was, and this is something biological parents take for granted, that my child will love me because I already loved her even before I met her. But I wanted her, but I wasn't very sure if she would want me the way I wanted her. Yes, so that was honestly that was my biggest fear, and I didn't talk about that to anybody at that time. Uh, I only told my mom, I need your help to change diapers, so come along. Yeah. And yeah, same experience as Raji. She used to wake up in the night screeching. And, my fears came true because I think the initial 15 days, 15 to 20 days, she did not bond with me the way I wanted her to because she was not used to seeing she was used to seeing people who were more senior. So she was very used to my mother. She would spend the day playing with me, but in the night she wanted to go sleep with my mom. And she would wake up and start screaming in the middle of the night. So I used to rush and try getting her back to my room, thinking that probably she'll sleep next to me now. But she would again go back to my parents and sleep in their room. Um, but I think and I went to a therapist at this time. I was already going to a therapist to understand, what might happen when the baby comes, how will the trauma play out. So she told me, she said, it's okay. She has not seen somebody who looks like you. Maybe you look very alien to her. So take her everywhere you go. So I would take her everywhere to buy underbread. Even when I went to the salon, she would be on my lap when I was getting my eyebrows done. And finally, I think after a month, she called me Mama. And yeah, and also a few days after that, she started sleeping peacefully next to me. We used to read stories and color and go to sleep. So it takes time um, in some cases, I think, but eventually, kids only know how to love you a lot. So
yeah, that
yeah.
question of will she love me was always on playing on my mind. So whenever I used to talk to people before even going for adoption, I asked this question. I asked them, I might sound dumb, but uh, do you think the child will love me? But it was easy, I think, in real life.
I think we also say, oh, biological parents, because the child has come through me, therefore the child will automatically love me, is also not true, because you have to put in that effort. And we see, even when we look at like a couple, a child will have an affinity more for one parent than the other, though they may not say it. They'll, like I do. I remember my a friend of mine, she was very upset and she said, I do so much for my kids and they come and tell me that, Amma, I don't love you. I love Appa more, and, and go away. And she's like, and he's like doing nothing. And I'm here, like
Yeah, yeah,
busting my ass for them. But I think, like you said, I think it's taken for granted. And maybe that's not the right way to put it in some sense, because you do have to put in that effort for the child to feel safe and comfortable enough to love you, right? And if they grow up with any adult, they will start having some bond with that adult, but
yeah.
genuinely for them to feel for that person will be different. So I want to change gears a little and ask this question. So, um, and I'm trying to just put this. So when a woman is going on her maternity leave, usually because um, there's 9 months of pregnancy, and typically the organization gets about a 3 to 4 months heads up notice to say, okay, around this time, and maybe not exact date, but say around this month she will be going on maternity. So the organization usually starts planning, and the person also starts planning, saying, I'm going to be away from, let's say, from my ninth month for another 6 months, and everyone's looking at their career. But in like you both of you mentioned, the in the adoption process, it's like you might just get like one email that says bingo, there is a child for ready for you. And how do you then plan your career, and how does the organization also plan your absence, for whatever period that you are going to be? How was that process for both of you?
Yeah. So when you register for adoption and
Hmm.
when your waiting period starts, there is a seniority number that's assigned to you. So seniority here means your number in the queue,
Ah, okay, okay.
right? So it starts with thousands.
Right.
So, and I kept talking to adoptive parents, and you can also check, it tells you that parents who applied for adoption on such and such a date will get their children on this date. So you kind of know, well, like a biological parent, you can't exactly tell them this is the date I will go on leave from.
Hmm.
I had defined a range.
Hmm. Okay.
Okay, so while my wait period wasn't as less as Raji, it was comparatively less. I had to wait for 10 months only.
Okay.
Um, so when the number reaches 150 or 100, you know that it can happen anytime.
Hmm.
So I remember I had told my boss 2 days back that my number is 110, and it could be very soon. And in 2 days, I got a referral. So I had to go and tell
Hmm.
him that I have my referral. So since
Hmm.
I had also spoken to him, I think somewhere he was ready to,
Hmm.
because he also knew that it cannot be a defined period. So
Hmm.
he was kind of prepared. And so when I told him, he just had to ask me, okay, so when are you going? So
Hmm.
even after I got the referral, I took about 15 days to go see my child and get her back. So in those 15 days, a lot had to be, whatever needed to be closed was closed. And yeah, I think 3 months later, when I came back, of course, there was this whole question of what role should we give you. There was this long wait period to give me a role back, and I don't know why. I don't know if the thought was around will she be able to manage. So this whole question around will she be able to manage, I could see that as a single parent, because I was mentally prepared. There was a crash, and I had a support system at home. There was even a play home that could extend as a childcare center. So Yeah, I found that a little weird when I was told, we're looking for a role where you can have enough time for yourself and your baby.
Hmm.
Uh, well, you should have asked me, are you prepared uh, to
Right.
begin your career?
Yeah. Yeah. So, Raji, was it similar with you? And how long did you take your
So for me,
maternity
it was a
leave
bit
for?
different because I had told my manager already when I had made up my mind and decided to apply for adoption. Um,
Hmm.
and the day the process started, I told her that I've been told that the waiting period would be around 1 year. So it starts today, and I'm already telling you upfront.
Hmm.
But she, yeah, and at
Hmm.
that point of time, we already started looking at how can I let go of certain things and give it off. But it came sooner than
Hmm.
expected. In 2 months, I had to already go.
Hmm.
So my leave was
Hmm.
not much. It was 1 month because we didn't have a policy. We didn't know, and
Okay.
even here, it was
Right.
more of a push from a manager to say, "Go ahead and take that leave." So, so, uh,
Hmm.
and 1 month
Hmm.
we didn't miss much, but then I assume, and I later get to know from my manager that she did do some sort of realignment, rearranging, and all of that. But when I came back, I did go back to
Hmm.
the same role and with the same, probably with lesser amount of work, but then the role was similar. I had a
Hmm.
shared space with more people working under my team. So
Right. Okay, at this point, I do want to, inform our listeners that while the labor law mandates maternity leave to be granted to women who've been in employment with them for over, if I'm not mistaken, 180 days for a 26 weeks leave, the law is extremely silent when you're adopting a child less than 3 months old. So if you're adopting a child under 3 months, then you are given the same set of leaves. But if you're adopting a child over 3 months, then actually the law is silent. So it doesn't even say anything that what should it be, what should it not be, and so on. And therefore, at this point, the organizations really need to step up and step in to say, okay, this is going to be irrespective of the nature of how the child came about. This is going to be the time that is going to be extended, because we do also have couples who do opt for surrogacy as a medium um, to have a child. And in that case, the child is being carried by somebody else, and but still, you once the child comes to you, in case of surrogacy, the surrogate mother gets 26 weeks of not 26, I think she gets lesser, she gets about 3 months of leave. But the child to uh, who if the child belongs to which the couple the child belongs to, I think there the again the law is a little silent, ambiguous on what should be the leave for a mother in that scenario. So just wanted to bring that out and for organizations as well.